taken my world by storm. It's the Marshall Stockwell 2. It's not a new speaker, but it's a new speaker to me. I was quite impressed when I got to hear this, but know its limitations. The biggest issue for me is it doesn't go that loud. On paper, 20 watts versus 30 watts, 30 watts. Yes, I've got 3 speakers here because it doesn't matter what speaker I hold in my hand. I'm guaranteed I'm going to get 2 questions. What does it sound like against the Motion Plus? What does it sound like against the Motion Boom? Motion Boom is my pound for pound world champion because pound for pound world champion means it offers the best value. Former pound for pound world champion, now kind of reinvented. There's 2 versions floating about. I don't know why. One version is firmware 36.38. The other version is the one I've got here, version 37.38. We're talking about the firmware. And if you've got 36.38, at this point in time, there is no firmware update. I don't know why. So it does appear, at the moment, from all the evidence, there are 2 versions. I've retuned my 37.38 version to sound a bit smoother, a bit more bass heavy. The 2 firmwares do sound a bit different. The 36.38, whether it's different hardware or not, I don't know. It's certainly more sparkly, certainly has more of the upper bass. This has a little bit more deep bass, less upper bass, but it also has a bit more 3 kilohertz peak. Could have done without that, and that's why I've had to tame that. So, these are incredible value. You're going to get different deals. It's going to go like between 70 and 100 quid. So we can say around 80 quid, around 80 quid. Quid's a pound. I've told you that before. A pound normally works out the same in dollars. £169. I'm saying £169 for the Marshall Stockwell 2 because we just had Prime Day. It came in at £120. At £120, I declare this very, very good value because it gives you a taste of the high end, whereas these are still budget speakers that gives you a great sound, great bass, great open sound. But that's certainly, to me, a bit more of a serious listen, a bit more of the high end, but maybe less of the fun factor that you get with these other type of speakers. £120 good value, 169, 170 quid, $170. You're talking a lot of money for not a lot of volume. 20 watts, 30 watts, 30 watts. We're going to get straight in. I'm going to say my low volume test, but it doesn't go very loud. So, yeah, if the other 2 are low volume, I'm still having to put this at 60% volume, which means we're at 45% on the Motion Plus. We're at 40% on the Boom. In terms of how loud does it sound to my ears, it's 60% on the Marshall Stockwell 2.
I'll be your love.
My money. You can't have my money, it's mine. At these particular volumes, what would I enjoy listening to most at this point in time? I'm going to say, it may be a shocker to some of you out there, it's the Marshall Stockwell 2. Does that make it a party speaker? No. Does it mean it's got amazing deep bass? No. But just something about it. It does have, we know, hopefully you saw my first video talking about the Marshall Stockwell 2, the Blumline processing, which probably not as high-tech as you may think, but however, it's trying to create some sort of stereo image from front-firing speakers and rear-firing speakers, well, drivers, I should be saying, just to recap. Full-range driver, woofer, passive radiator, full-range driver. Left, right, and they try, so face-on is how I listen, and it's giving you some sort of image. Obvious reverb going on, but it's not distracting from the actual track. It still sounds kind of natural, but yes, you can hear it's not quite as tight as it should be because there's clearly reverb. I don't know if there's much else going on. I think the processing is quite simple and basic, but they make it sound quite high-end. A lot of you have said to me, is it anything like live sound on Sony? Or, oh, it sounds like live sound. No, they are two different things. Live sound to me is producing the sort of thing you get in a venue, which is not, it's not like a recorded track. It's a very particular kind of sound. And yes, it's great fun, but if you compare it to the original track, they're completely different. Whereas I compare this to the original track, it's quite similar. It's doing a pretty good job. So, at these volumes, I do prefer the Stockwell 2, but that's not to say, obviously, you don't need me to tell you. There's only one on the table here that has serious deep bass. That's why we love the Motion Boom. Still a good listen, but it's all about the bass at the lower volumes. But it's kind of a little bit too clean sounding outside of the bass compared to the fizzy nature and the imaging that I'm getting. Whether it's that accurate or not, but it's quite accurate, but not completely accurate, as I said, on the Stockwell 2. And hey-ho, I kind of like the Motion Plus, but we kind of moved on from when this speaker first came out. I'm playing it in custom mode. You can play it in all sorts of modes, and I know some of you think it's not fair custom mode. I think I'm playing it in, for me, the way I listen to, and you seem to be interested in how I listen. So bear in mind, I'm not saying this is how the speaker works. I'm saying, here's a review. Not even a review. Here's an opinion from my point of view. And you should take that on board because this is my custom EQ setting. I've moved on from my previous custom EQ setting. However, whichever custom EQ setting you use, I think it's going to sound a lot better than any of the default modes. It's quite smooth sounding, has a little bit of a deep bass, but it's still, even though it has less upper bass than 36.38 firmware, it's still a very upper bass nature to it. Yes, I have pushed that upper bass in the custom EQ, but if you don't do that, well, it sounds quite thin in the bass anyway. I know there's an argument from you guys out there that you're pushing the bass, the upper bass, past its natural points, past its natural setting date, whatever, but you like to keep it low. I understand because it brings out more of that deep bass, but there ain't that much deep bass to bring out. So why waste all that upper bass you've got in hand to try and fill it out just to hear a little bit of the deep bass that we know is, even if you hear a bit of that deep bass, it's not proper deep bass. That's proper deep bass. But hey-ho, at these volumes, the one speaker I would probably pick up to listen to if I was forced at gunpoint to listen at these volumes, getting the Marshall Stockwell 2. We'll take it up a notch. We're going to go to, well, I'm calling it my 70% test. You will see, because I do put down the volumes that these tests are actually recorded at, which are matched volumes in the real world, by the way. 85%.
Somebody said they saw you. The person you were kissing wasn't me, and I would never ask you. I just kept it to myself. I don't wanna know if you play me, keep it on the low, 'cause my heart can't take it anymore. And if you creep in, please don't let it show. Oh baby, I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. I don't know the truth. Baby, keep it to yourself, I don't wanna know. If you're playing me, keep it on the low, 'cause my heart can't take it anymore. And if you're creeping, please don't let it show. Oh baby, I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know. If you're playing me, keep it on the low, 'cause my heart can't take it anymore. And if you're creeping, please don't let it show. Just keep it on the low. Yes, I don't wanna know. Yeah, oh,
The most obvious thing here is Motion Boom's at 60%, Motion Plus 70%, but we're already at 85% on the Stockwell 2. It's becoming more upper bass heavy, and the difference now in bass between Motion Plus and indeed, of course, the Motion Boom is the very noticeable lack of deeper bass, even overall bass on the Stockwell 2. While we still have some upper bass and mid bass on the Stockwell 2, it's rolling off rapidly now compared to the Motion Plus, Motion Boom, which is actually on the rise all the way up to around the 55 hertz mark. All this means it's relatively stronger now, more dominant in the mids for the Stockwell 2 compared to the Motion Plus and the Boom. So the balance is kind of not there now once you hit these volumes. And there's your problem. 85%, probably as loud as you're going to play it or want to play it in the real world. There's no point in really trying to edge out a bit more volume because you're losing what the speaker's all about. At 85%, it is now sounding a bit anemic against the Motion Boom. It was low volumes, it holds on to its deep bass, does have some decent deep bass, pleasing deep bass, but we're losing that now. So it can hold its own even if it can't handle the deep bass at low volumes of something like the Motion Boom. There's enough deep bass there that you're not missing out. You're still getting all of that track, and it's doing other things to make up for it. 85%, becoming a bit thin, but hey-ho, in the real world, if you want, you could turn it around. You will get more of a deep bass sound. You now face on with the passive radiator, but even though we supposedly have matched full range drivers there and there, is it? No, actually, it's there and then slightly offset there. It still sounds veiled from that side. So I do listen face on because, yes, I would like more deep bass, but it sounds clear and in your face for the vocals, whereas the vocals are veiled. And if you really did that, you'd have to start turning your treble button up. And as you already know from a previous video, which, yes, of course, you've watched it, start pushing the treble up. It's going to start eating into the bass to handle it. Start doing that relative thing. So it's not really a win-win in terms of treble. It's a win in terms of treble, but lose in terms of bass. So yeah, I'm sticking with face on. Even now, I'm seeing an advantage for the Motion Plus. That has reasonable bass now, as at the point where this is actually reducing its bass, because we can get some volume out of the Motion Plus. And a nice detailed open sound, but doesn't have the bass of the Boom. So at these volumes, I would say if I had to force at gunpoint, tell us which one you're going to listen to at these volumes, it would be a draw. Either one of these would probably save my life with a gun to my head, and I'd be happy. But it's not going to be this. I do love this speaker. I think it's a great speaker. If you're happy to spend that sort of money outside of a £120 deal on Prime for a speaker that's not going to go very loud, but I know a lot of you don't play your speakers amazingly as loud as I do. I know a lot of you have huge speakers and you do like to play loud, but I'm surprised at the number of you who say, well, we don't play that loud. We play at lower, moderate volumes. Because to me, I'm talking about real, to me, these are real. I don't really listen at 50%, and I'm saying I'm surprised you do. So I have to take that into consideration. If you listen at lower volumes, I think the Marshall Stockwell's a winner, but as we've pushed 85% and above, it's in trouble. So you can see the mismatch in volumes. So if you really needed more volume, the maximum volume you can get out of this is not a shock to you, but it's 100%. Yes, 100%. And by the way, I don't know if you know, we have a volume, an analog volume knob dial on the Marshall Stockwell 2. One advantage is I know a lot of you like to fiddle between the volume here and then the volume on your phone. The problem is there isn't an option to sync your volume on the phone or your device and the speaker, which means you can never just control via your Stockwell as you could on, look, they all have volume up, volume down, but they're synced volumes. But just know whatever volume is set on your device, changing that will only be relative to that volume. So basically you turn it on and I've got to have it at maximum volume all the time to get the maximum volume out of my phone. The downside of that, of course, is I maximum out the amp all the time. I'm reducing my battery life even though I'm not using the volume. So 100% on the Stockwell 2. How would they all compare then? So yeah, it's not a speaker. If you're doing most of your listening near maximum volumes, you've got a problem if you're going to be spending that sort of money on the speaker. It's not a speaker to play at maximum volumes because it's now very tinny, very bass light. So whereas it was nice and balanced at lower volumes, if we actually look at the measurements, minus 19 is behind the highs, minus 18 behind the mids, minus 16. That means the quietest part of the whole sound signature now is the bass. I'm pretty sure for most of you, that's not what you've signed up for. Now, that's the thing. 100% is 80% is 70%. And why is 80% a magic number? Most of these big brands we know on these kind of speakers, you get to 80%, and that's as much bass as you'll get. We talk about bass reduction, but it isn't really. It's a bass limit, the bass limits, but the mids and the highs will start increasing. So we're still near our maximum sweet spot for these speakers for getting full bass. I say that because there is some at 80%. There is already some slight bass reduction on the Motion Plus. No bass reduction yet on the Motion Boom, which, you know, for me, obviously, you better listen as well. Makes the Motion Boom, for me, a winner in this little test. On the basis that we're already starting to lose some of the bass from the Motion Plus, which I can't really listen to it now. Well, I could if it wasn't against the Motion Boom, but the difference is obvious. Lower volumes, as I said, you want clarity, you want bass. You've got a good choice there because you still get enough bass there to enjoy your track. But at 80% now against the 70%, I've lost. There's an obvious loss of bass, but not as obvious if I was just doing it against the Stockwell 2, which is the bass has basically gone completely missing in action. There's only one thing left to know, as if you needed to know, if they were all at maximum volume, just how much of a difference would there be?
Like concrete, stand still 'cause I need me. I need the thrills I can't be. Stand still, is it too late to change my ways? I'm missing out on living. Yeah, in the world's at my feet, it's all on my knees and broken down on my knees and down, still reaching. Pull me in and break these barriers, baby. Like concrete, standing still 'cause I need me. I need the thrills I can't breathe. Standing still, I need me. The thrill.
Don't need a graph to tell you Motion Boom by a long way are the loudest, 3 decibels over the Motion Plus. A crazy 11 decibels louder than the Stockwell 2. The Stockwell 2 simply doesn't go as loud as you may well be expecting. And when you hit the maximum volumes, you are losing a bass. It's becoming screechy and tinny. At the 50 hertz mark, it's 14 decibels down on the Motion Boom. It's 5 decibels down on the Motion Plus. These are big differences. 30 watts, 30 watts, 20 watts. You'd be entitled to think there's going to be some difference, but not that much difference. We know it's not just about power because bigger drivers going to sound louder. Surface area count, so 30 watts, I'd still expect the boom to go louder than the Plus, but the Plus does a good job. But given the size of the woofer, we've got 2 full range drivers, 20 watts. You'd be forgiven for thinking, what on earth is going on? Why is that not much more volume? Because it's massive. It's 11 decibels. It should never be an 11 decibel difference in loudness between these 2 speakers. It's huge. I will still say bass reduction, both starting to get a bit thin, bit tinny, but still a decent listen, but neither of them are the greatest listens at maximum volume. But hey ho, you will get good volumes out of both of these speakers, but even more so out of the boom. It's not just 11 decibels down on the boom, but the Stockwell is 8 decibels down on the Motion Plus. And it doesn't matter how you measure it. It's the same story in whether it's just in peaks or in luffs. The actual loudness, perceived loudness, if you like, of the actual complete track itself. Now, that's the story. You've got the story. The story is really nice speaker. You can have a serious semi-high-end listen to this speaker at lowish to mid-high volumes. But you can't party to this speaker. You don't really want to push it past 80%. Well, it sounds okay, but it's already reducing bass at not a huge volume. But there's enough enjoyment. There's enough of what it's doing at low volumes to say, I can forgive that. Just about cheap enough. £169. If I look at the Sonos Roam, £160. Is that the world's most overpriced speaker? Maybe it's the world's most over-designed speaker, for which that's what you're paying for. You're certainly not paying for the audio quality on that speaker. I think at this stage, if I'm coming up for an award for overpriced speaker, that's probably it. I've noticed the Tribit Stormbox Pro, and here's the thing: this Pro stuff is. I'm wondering what's going on in the audio world. I wonder if Pro doesn't stand for professional in the audio world. It stands for something different because it has from £120. I'm seeing it now to now £80-ish, which is getting a bit more reasonable for a very average speaker. But it's the Pro version. It's certainly not a Pro sounding. It's not an improvement really on what's come before. And then we've got the Motion Boom, and you're still asking me about the Select Pro. Guys, go and have a look at Snow Queen's Tech channel, where she has actually had a listen to the Select Pro, and yes, you get lovely cuddly lights. Apparently that makes it professional, but it's clearly inferior to the actual Motion Boom. So don't get carried away with this marketing. They stick Pro at the end. They think they can charge you another double the price of what it should be. I don't know what's going on, but it must stand for something other than professional. On this table, we have two aptX speakers. That's really rare these days. aptX, but SBC for the Motion Boom, which also happens to be the only speaker in my testing on my Android that you can't really use for YouTube because latency is really bad, but these have really a good latency. What I will say is this does support fast charging. So you can actually charge this at 36 watts. 36 watts means normally 5 volts, 2 amps is what most of these speakers charge at. That's 10 watts. So it's over 3 times the capacity in terms of charging. 36 watts does mean you can fast charge this speaker, but you're probably not going to listen to it at really loud volumes. Hey, maybe that's why they've limited. I don't know. You know that you can do that. The headline specs I think were 20 hours or something for battery life. Of course, if you limit the headroom of your speaker, the battery's going to last longer, isn't it? So I don't know. It probably has nothing to do with it. It just came to me as I'm sitting here. Hey, we could have a special version speaker, extended battery life. But hey, all we have to do is limit the volume. Like we've got stamina mode on Sony speakers. Well, of course, limits the bass. Okay, we get more battery life. So, as I said before, don't get carried away with battery life. But if you want to, 28 watt hours, 25 watt hours, 37 watt hours, clearly, just know if it goes louder, you're going to get less battery life. If it's got more bass, you're going to get less battery life. But you could do the Sony thing and without telling you, slowly reduce volume. You don't quite realize what's going on. They've extended the battery and you think, oh, well, my Sony's better than JBL. And that's why I'm a Sony fanboy. Anyway, the takeaway of this particular video is it's a really nice speaker. £169 for this speaker. In terms of what's out there in the market, it's not unreasonable. I think that's reasonable value. But when I saw it £120, I was pretty gutted because it was only like a week or two, isn't it, after I'd already bought it. £120, I think that would be spot on. I think that's where I would place that speaker, around £120. I wouldn't argue at all. £169 is a bit pricey because you can't party to it. But you can have a serious listen. For a lot of you, I'm sure that doesn't even come into equation. It's also IPX4. You can't put it by the pool. Well, not if you are a little bit frightened of dropping it in the pool, whereas we're talking IPX7 on the other two speakers. So takeaway is not bad value. It is a little bit different from anything else that I've personally listened to. But when it comes to volume, well, the Motion Boom is going to win the prize. I think we kind of moved on from the Motion Plus. However, I EQ it. It's okay. It's still a nice listen, but I've still got options that will better it for whatever I'm really doing. Other than the size is pretty good. So it's still a good value. It's still a good value speaker. Still offers great dispersion. It's still, something unique out there with its side-firing tweeters and still aptX. But kind of whatever way I listen, I could have think, well, I'll get more bass out of that, or get more mids out of something else, or get more excitement even out of this at lower volumes. That's where I am. Hope you got something out of this video, and I thank you for watching.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.